Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting episode of RadioRama, where as the name entails, I show you how to work on radios and other fun things like record players and stereos and occasionally television sets. And today we have this Zenith high fidelity AM FM radio. I've worked on 10 billion of these things. I'm trying to remember the model. What is the model number? Like it really matters. What is the model number? Excuse me, sorry. Anyway, I don't know what the model is. It's not like it really matters, but it is probably post 1955 because it has the civil defense markings. And just like a lot of other Zenith radios from this era, it probably still works. So let's go ahead and fire it up. Looks like the pilot light is lit. There's a little bit of hum, which is not unusual. Probably got the original electrolytic capacitors inside that are probably tired and need replacing.
Commented a talk on April 5th titled, "Forgiveness is the Heart of Christianity."
Yep, it works. So I guess I'll need to recap it anyway. Unless it's yours. If it's your radio and you know how to work on these things, then you should recap them, because I wouldn't trust any of the old capacitors in this thing. Capacitors are now well past their expiration date. Okay, a duck just showed up in my garage. It actually wants food. Uh-oh, there's her partner. Miss Duck! Alright, well here is the innards. And this is an earlier version of this chassis. They used, and they basically a slightly modified version of this chassis for years. The original version of this chassis, which had AM FM, was, I think they came out like in, seriously, I think 47 or 48. And they used some iteration of this chassis well up into the 60s. So they had well over a decade worth of use. Some of the earlier 50s ones, well, this is a mid-50s model, has these piezoelectric tweeters, which never work. Like, I'm not sure why, but they just don't work. So those are probably bad. It's a shame, because it probably would sound a little bit better with those, but I'm not going to worry about it. Some of the earlier ones, the speakers would be attached to the chassis, but on these it's attached to the cabinet, and you just unplug it here. Well, actually, maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm wrong. The tweeters are plugged in, but the speaker is in fact integrated into the chassis, because I can see it's attached there. That makes things actually a little bit easier, because you can test it without having to run alligator clip leads. This has an audio input already, a phono input, but this is a true hot chassis set. And what they've done, what was that? Never mind, sorry. They've run the positive going through this capacitor. Well, actually, I think that's the ground. That's the ground. So that means that if you were to, I remember as a little kid, like my grandmother had some old record player that was a hot chassis, and I remember as a kid, like if you were to touch that, and like, you know, being in a basement with a concrete floor or whatever, you'd get a little bit of a tingle. Like it wouldn't be great. We're going to eliminate that possibility entirely by putting an isolation transformer in between the ground and the input, as well as the positive. And that way, there's going to be no shock hazard, no possibility of getting even a slight tingle. So let's unplug everything here. They were pretty smart too. They knew that, you know, a hot chassis, you don't want to mess around. So the screws go through, I'm not sure if you can see them, those white things, those are nylon. So the screws holding the chassis in go through nylon, and then the shafts or the tuner and the volume, those go through plastic as well. So there's no possibility for anyone to touch the chassis. And it's got a good bolted on back. Okay, well, if you've seen one of my videos restoring these, then probably you're going to see exactly the same thing happen, which is replace the capacitors. I've just about memorized these things. I know that the electrolytic is here, and it has 4 different sections, and the values are as such. The square symbol, which is embossed into the phenolic material, that's 80 microfarads, and then the rest of them are 40 microfarads. I can't remember if it's 40 or 50, doesn't matter. And there's a creative way that you can replace these guys because there's not a lot of room here. There's 2 of these values, or 2 of these sections that only have like a single lead going to them, like this orange one here. It's hard to film that one, and then there's a yellow lead, and that goes all the way over here. And since it's a hot chassis, you can put your grounds anywhere, so you can relocate your electrolytics. And likewise, there's about 7 paper capacitors in here, a bunch of 0.02 and 0.05 rated caps. This bumblebee cap is the across the line cap, and I've seen these guys explode spectacularly, so you shouldn't trust these guys. And this is the selenium rectifier, and there's a debate on whether or not you should or should not replace them. I'm in the kind of you should camp, simply because even though they're pretty reliable and tend to last for a very long time, if they do go out, which that has happened to me before, they stink. Like, you wouldn't believe how bad they stink. It's like someone pelts your home with 1,000 rotten eggs. That's how bad it smells. And it's also kind of toxic. So all the more the reason to replace it. I'm looking in here, and you see that kind of muddy looking goo? That means that electrolytic spewed at some point. So I'm amazed that it still works, period, because you can see it's pretty dramatic. That means the juice or whatever's in there like got hot enough to spew out of there. So it's always a good idea to replace those things. Okay, so the first part of the process has been completed. See what I'm talking about? You can like relocate your electrolytics to places that are a little easier to deal with, because obviously we couldn't cram them underneath there. Now, before we get too much further, we're going to go ahead and fire this thing up and make sure it still works, because sometimes, and I've done it way more times than I care to admit, perhaps you forgot to solder something, or maybe you soldered it wrong. You want to know before you get too carried away so you can check your work. All right. I have to admit, like, yesterday I installed a electrolytic capacitor backwards. I was like, why is my B plus running away? Or why is one of my filament voltages shooting through the roof? And that was why. It's a very stupid mistake. This is perplexing. Wait a minute, do I have... Shit! God damn it! Oh, sorry. I had the phono switch on.
And Wall Street and the old party bosses teamed up on a hayseed like me. Most set of words, I think, 19th century was actually made the state song of the state of Washington. I've traveled all over this country.
Oh, interesting show. Anyway, it doesn't have any hum anymore, and it still works, so it's a good thing I didn't mess anything up. Other than, like, forgetting to turn the phono switch off. So we can resume with the rest of the recappage. So we have, how many left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this one, 6. 6 all together, so not too bad. Probably get that done and knock them out in about 15 minutes. Okay, so the radio is fully recapped. And wasn't that difficult. And it still works.
Packages.
Which is a good thing. Now, the next thing we need to do, of course, is replace the selenium rectifier. It's just a little warm. I mean, it's probably okay, but I'm going to replace it anyway. All right, so we got our selenium replaced. Believe it or not, that tiny little thing on the right, that's the new rectifier. And I'm going to test fire it. And because I don't trust myself, sometimes I've wired these in backwards, and when you do that, that's very bad news. So I'm going to have my hand on the switch, turn it off in case I did it wrong. Okay, bad stuff probably would have happened by now, so I think I probably put it in right. Usually all that happens is that you torch the diode. So it's not the end of the world if you do it.
Reliable funding source. When it comes to people we can count on, we are talking about you. Please support this vital community resource. Give at kqed.org/donate or by calling 1-800-937-8850.
All right, so the electronics are very happy. So now that we have all the capacitors replaced and they have installed the new rectifier, it's time to install the audio input, which is, again, already here. We just need to put an isolation transformer between the user and the chassis. It's just a little hot. It's important that you put a resistor in conjunction with your new diode, because those diodes are a lot more efficient than those old seleniums, and so you need to tamper it down a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to be putting a little bit too much juice into the chassis. It's not good for it. All right, now what I'm going to do is clean the volume control. And yes, I am using WD-40. There's really not that much in WD-40. Things like kerosene, some other shit. Sorry for cussing so much. I've had a few people complain, rightfully so. And I don't know. It's not like I can't help myself, but I just do it, so I'm sorry about that. Probably learned it from my granddad. My granddad was the most foul-mouthed man ever. Anyway, I'm going to clean the wafer switch here. There we go. I'll clean it up a little bit. Likewise, let's go ahead and get the switch for phono and radio. I'll have to get the tone control up in the front. That was a little more tricky because it's in the middle of the speaker, and you don't want to get WD-40 all over the speaker. That's not good. Okay, so I'm not sure why I do this, but I clean the top of the chassis and the tubes and the tube sockets. And now what I'm going to do is lubricate the tuning mechanism with a little zoom spout oil. I'm not sure why they call it the zoom spout or zoom oil. It's like a very exciting name, but we're going to put some oil in the bearings here, and then there's this like little cam, and this cam is what drives the FM slugs. So for AM they have a conventional tuning condenser, but for the for FM they're using these slugs. So you can see them going up and down here. That's them. So already that feels a lot better. It's like little tactile things like that. Your customer will appreciate it. Anyway, now it is time to install the audio input feature. Alright, so we have the isolation transformer installed. And we have an audio coming in through the right and left channels, tied together through a set of resistors. And then we have the primary of the transformer going to the RCA coupling here. It's important to do that. If you have a hot chassis set, by default you should be doing this. Even on a floating chassis, you should be doing this. But now we have our little Bluetooth thingy going.
Just say this.
These are such good sounding radios. You know, the thing is, like, a lot of the sets I work on have like these pitiful little 4-inch speakers. And, you know, people will buy them and they like the novelty of playing their music through it, but you know, it's a novelty. Versus something like this where you could use it and it's actually a pleasant sounding piece, where you could use it for the sake of it being a nice thing to listen to. So now that we've got the electronic kind of squared away, it's time to turn our attention to the cosmetics. Well, I accidentally forgot to press record, but now I'm working on the cabinet, and I'm using a product called Old English. And what it does a really good job of kind of covering up and hiding all the scratches and abrasions from over the years. So I'm just going to go over the whole thing pretty liberally with it, let it sit and soak in for a little bit, and then we're going to follow up with some car wax because we want to get that shine back. All right, look and see, that already looks a lot better, but we're not done yet. So next thing I'm going to do is get my car wax. I use a McGuire's cleaner paste wax, which I guess it does exactly what it says. It cleans up the surface and then it'll make it look shiny. I haven't used any synthetic waxes. I feel like the Caranuba does a better job. Plus, it smells nice too. And I use this because I used to do it by hand, but it would just like cramp my hands up. So this saves time and it saves my hands. Okay, so that's after a few applications of car wax, and you see it's just a little shinier. It also is a little bit cleaner. Hence why they call it clear wax. So now that we've gotten this taken care of, it'll be time to reassemble and do a final test. Alright, it's done.
We moved up here a year ago. I'm starting to feel alright.
That's really solid sounding. That is with the audio input. And let's turn the switch back here. Put it back on radio. And here we have radio.
Sort of, listen, I disagree.
Top gun is over to the planet and I'm coasting.
'80s Madonna, '90s Semisonic, one of those one-hit wonders all apart.
Oh, I'm turning into one of those old people. I'm listening to crap I listened to when I was a kid in the 80s. Anyway, really happy with how this turned out. It's not the most attractive radio ever, but it sounds really good. And that's why people like buying these from our museum. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Until the next time a radio comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.